And it's monthly. We do 10 times a year. We skip 2 months.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I think we're all situated. Hopefully we have enough tables and chairs set up. So it's past 9:30. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd like to excuse Mike Mills, who's out of town, so he asked me to conduct this meeting as the vice chair. First of all, thanks to Jason Allen and Utah Lake State Park for making this facility available to us. It's nice to get out of the office and meet close to the lake. Before we get to the meat of the agenda, I'd like to go around and have each of you introduce yourself. We have a mixture of technical committee members who are here representing their organization as well as other interested parties, members of the public. So as you introduce yourself, please let us know what organization you're with and if you have a special interest in Utah Lake. So I'll start. My name is Reed Price, and I am the vice chair of the Utah Lake Commission Technical Committee, and I represent the city of Orem on the technical committee. And we'll go to our right around the table, and then we'll hit the guys that are sitting in the back rows.
I'm J.D. Shepard of Mapleton City.
I'm David Richards, we're Felix Consulting, doing ecological research on the lake.
I'm Theron Miller with the Wasatch Front Water Quality Council, so 3 of our members are part of this committee, so and they provide funding to do research.
Jacob Olson, BYU grad student looking at atmospheric deposition in Utah Lake.
Dale Fonkin with the Division of Wildlife Resources in Springville.
My name is Mike Wilson. My day job is the general manager of the Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy. So we provide drinking water to those 2 cities. In turn, that gives me a couple other roles where I serve as the president of the board of the Powell River Water Users Association, so Dairy Creek Reservoir and that organization, and then also I'm currently the president of the Utah Lake Water Users Association, so the pumping plant on the north end of the lake and the irrigation interest going into Salt Lake County. I represent that as well.
Brandon Snyder, Linden City. Brad Costa in Silver City.
And Merrill Division of Water Resources in Utah.
Matt Howard, Division of Wildlife. Brian Self, Provo City.
Excuse me, Mark Ulrich, Provo City, manager of the water reclamation plant.
Ben Styerman, Forestry Fire and State Marines.
Victoria Camp, Lehigh City. Carrie Malkovich, City of Woodland Hills.
Rebecca Andrews, Provo City.
Mike Rao, Central Utah Water Conservancy District.
Scott Daly, Division of Water Quality.
Eric Ellis, Utah Lake Commission.
Jump right back here. You want to introduce yourself?
Dan Wynn, Spanish Fork City.
Okay, then we'll go back here.
Sam Brieger with the Utah Lake Commission.
Sullivan Law with Vineyard City, water and sewer manager.
Aaron Hone, I'm the new ranger here.
Juan Garrido for Springville City. I'm the superintendent for stormwater and sewer department.
Jeff Denblater, CH2M.
David Barlow, Kempanoga Special Service District.
John Adams, Kempanogas.
Ben Holcomb, Division Water Quality.
So real quick, is Jason no longer the ranger?
He's
Or-
a ranger here.
He's a ranger?
He's the manager.
And
Oh,
state
so,
water
okay.
manager.
But you are the ranger.
I'm the ranger.
For a second there, I thought Jason had been reassigned somewhere else. Drove by his house yesterday and saw his truck there. Okay, first item on the agenda is to review and approve the Utah Lake Commission Technical Committee minutes from our last meeting, which was April 19th, 2017. Those were emailed out to you recently. You've had an opportunity to review them. If there are any comments about them, we are looking for a motion to approve them.
They were really good. I'll make a motion to approve.
We've got a motion from, what was
Carrie
your-
Malkovich.
From Carrie Malkovich from Woodland Hills.
I'll second.
And we have a second. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? All technical committees present that agree with this motion, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Or nay. Okay, minutes are approved. Moving on to agenda item number 3. Eric will be providing some brief updates on the Utah Lake issues that we're reading about in the news and other interests that we might have. So Eric, I'll turn the time over to you for agenda item number 3.
Okay, I'm actually going to skip the one that we've been seeing in the news mostly because we'll talk about that in point 6. But the lake levels on the lake have been fantastic. We're 2.8 some odd feet below compromise, which is phenomenally better than we were last year at this time. We're still close to 6 feet higher than we were last year, so that's been great. It's hard to not talk about algae without it's kind of putting a major curb on lake usage, but those that are using the lake are really enjoying it, more accessible than ever. Well, not than ever, but than it has been in quite a few years now. Did I see a hand?
No.
Okay. We've got fall field trips. Recently, we've had paddle camps that have gone exceptionally well down here at the state park. Huge turnout. We had 40 some odd the first week and close to 30 the second week attend that. That was lots of fun. We have field trips coming up this fall in October, on October 3rd and 4th. I know that a number of you come and help out with that, and we're looking forward to that help once again. That'll be over at the Saratoga Springs City Marina.
How are you selecting who goes to that?
We give preference to West Alpine City School Districts, but oftentimes we'll end up with a couple Provo schools or what have you, depending on who signs up. And
Is it an application process or just
application process like it
and
has
you
been.
select?
Yeah. So we'll have room for approximately 700 students, possibly an extra class or two this year because we've had a number of individuals reach out interested in volunteering. So we can every extra station we can add, it gives us 2 more classes that we can add to that. So. The Utah Lake Festival, something to be thinking about as a technical group. The Utah Lake Festival is designed to really highlight the work being done on the June Sucker Recovery Program and work being done on the lake itself. The legislature in the last legislative session appropriated an extra $10,000 to go towards improving our lake festival. And so if any of you have ideas on some additional elements that we might add to the festival that come in at about $10,000, we would love to hear those ideas over the next winter months, and we can work on implementing that into next year's festival.
And by the way, I thought it was fantastic this year. We had a good turnout. And people seemed to really enjoy themselves, those who came.
Yeah, it was really well attended, and we had a good time.
Maybe we can invest in some of those banners that go across the university.
Oh, we have them, and
Or some of the
unfortunately
other
there was a mix-up in communication, and for the first year in a long time it didn't get put up there. There was a double booking, and maybe because we don't pay that we didn't get priority, I don't know. But we do have those banners, and we'll have them up next year. Permanent wind stations. Sam, would you like to talk about those for a moment?
Yeah, we've been in contact with MesoWest, which is the University of Utah program that manages a network of weather stations that actually connect with, what's it called, the National Weather Service, I think. Anyway, they've been very helpful in trying to further refine our process. They've actually recommended a local company that we're looking at for equipment as well as working with a larger supplier. We have already been in contact with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and a variety of other departments on getting 2 sites, permanent sites, approved. So that's in process as well. We're hoping to have one on Bird Island and one up on the north end, most likely in American Fork, Book Harbor. As of right now, we have some donations that have been offered up by the sailing community as well to help fund that project. So that combined with the funding we set aside as the commission, we feel it's possible for us to get those 2 stations in without any issues. We're just simply in the final steps of discovering, what power source do we need to make sure our uploads are fast enough to be of use to the recreation community, as well as making sure we have the right sensors on those as well. So we're nearing completion on the quote process, I believe, on being able to get that taken care of and get them put in. Originally, we'd hoped to have it earlier in the season, but we're grateful for all the help we've received so far, and we expect it should be wrapped up soon.
And we've also worked with a company out of Minnesota that developed a wind resource for boaters that works with an app. And so when we have boaters out on the lake, they can keep that app open and know what's happening down at the south end of the lake. So if a wind event starts taking place, they can head off the lake as soon as possible and have near to live data as far as wind information that they might not be aware of up on the north end of the lake. So hopefully it'll be a helpful resource. Access points. Sam and one of our interns have been working really hard at gathering some cool information on all of the access points around the lake. So they've been driving around with a GoPro on the car that will show people they can click on a video and it goes a high-speed route out to that access point and then slows down at each of the corners so that they can see where they're having to take a left or take a right. And then at the end of the access point, Sam's taking great photography of each of those access points so that people can go onto the webpage, the UtahLakeCommission.org webpage, click on access points, and there will be a tab for each of the different 25 access points around the lake. And the readers will be able to see what's there, what's available, so that it isn't just a, we're going to stick to Utah Lake State Park because we know what's there kind of an idea. They'll actually know for whatever they're looking for, they can see what that is. Any other feedback on that?
We just want to make sure we provide detailed information. As I just mentioned, it's just a map right now, so they can get directions through Google Maps, but this is intended to be much more inclusive to not only let them know where it is, but what they can do there. So they can know what recreation is popular at that access point, what concessionaires might be available nearby. We're trying to make it a wealth of information so people can use more of the lake more effectively.
And as part of that, one of the fun aspects of it is our intern that's young enough to use Snapchat all the time has been doing Snapchat posts that are kind of goofy but kind of fun, showing people what they're up to as they arrive at each of these access points, and that's gaining some feedback and good responses through the folks that use that form of social media. National Park Service Recreational Trails and Conservation Assistance Program. We've reached out to a number of you and have had a fantastic response on getting support letters for our application. This is a grant that really just provides planning services through the National Parks RTCA program, and that's going through final vetting right now as all the applications were due end of last week. So we're hopeful that will be successful and that we can get some help filling the gaps in the trail between here and Saratoga, and also doing some more refined alignment work on the remainder of the shoreline trail. You'll be hearing more of it, especially communities that are aligning the lake, but also as a body here that is interested in completing that shoreline trail. Communications. Sam, do you want to give us a report on that?
So a couple updates. We haven't met for a couple months here. I did a report to the governing board in June. We have established a monthly media packet that is emailed out to PIOs that we work with, whether that's in recreation departments or for the cities or various recreation agencies. Basically, just each month sending out for that month what events are going on, what projects might be completed, topics that they can discuss all to do about Utah Lake. And so far, the feedback we've been receiving has been very positive. One big success we had, as Eric mentioned, there was that miscommunication on the banner for the Utah Lake Festival. And as a result, we focused very specifically on publicizing the Utah Lake Festival on social media and asking for help in doing that. When we surveyed people who attended the festival, I think it was something like 80% of the people who responded to our survey said they heard about the festival due to social media. So it was definitely a big success for the festival to see that we were able to have such a great outreach thanks to all the people that we partnered with from the various cities and other organizations. So we will be continuing those efforts. We're looking to further develop those, partly in the place of algae bloom is obviously one topic right now that we're trying to focus on, providing information to those PIOs, especially with the city, so they know how to respond to their citizens. Another topic that we're trying to develop further is the recreation element. We'll be meeting with a variety of PIOs in the recreation area here connected with Utah Lake, both PIOs from the cities, representatives from the different concessionaires, in order to discuss how we continue to include the positive messages about Utah Lake, despite whatever difficulties it may be facing. So that's been successful. We've had a variety of successes on our website and social media. Our website now is actually averaging right around 13,000 page views a month, which is, I would say, about 400 or 500% higher than I expected when we started tracking our website back in October. So we've had a lot of great growth where people are looking up information on the water levels and our access points and a variety of other information. As of late, social media, we've been continuing to push it, and we've been happy to hear several residents in the area make comments on our posts or other posts saying, the Utah Lake Commission is doing a great effort. They're trying to talk to people. They're working hard on social media. So we're really happy to hear that people are noticing the efforts we're making to improve public communications. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for right now.
Okay, and one of the points that I missed, the communication effort has been going very well. Just despite the bloom that's out on the lake, as we've been able to reach out, especially before the lake-wide warning, we've had some really successful events take place on the lake. We had a sandcastle competition that we hosted in partnership with the American Fork Boat Harbor and their concessionaire up there that had good attendance, and we had some fun prizes. The top prize went to a 8-foot tall gnome that they created that was really fantastic, and that was also thanks to the partnerships with the county and others to get sand down to that beach. The Utah Lake State Park, I was going to have Jason talk about this, but Jason put together an application for a non-motorized boat grant just to the north and east of the park entrance. There's the tail end of the Provo River Trail has a small parking lot right there currently, and the state park owns the parcel to the north of that parking lot. And so we met earlier this week, and there are a number of good partners: the Utah Mitigation Commission, the Utah Lake Commission. Who else was partnering on that? Wildlife. Anyway, they're gonna create a completed parking lot that is not a fee area that will allow folks to come down, park. There will be a non-motorized boat access into the river right there, restrooms, some lighting. It should be a really nice area so that there's not just cars piled randomly along the sides of the road there for folks that double up to get into the park. And provide an opportunity for people at the end of the trail to have a restroom facility and a trailhead, official trailhead. The Mitigation Commission is tying into that because this will also have a benefit on the Provo River Delta project that will be immediately to the north of that. It'll provide a parking area for that facility as well. Expect to see groundwork being done this fall, some of the surface completed in the spring. And then we'll start looking for some additional funding to kind of finalize that project. But the motorized boat grant did not come through, and so we're pulling together resources that we can for now.
Okay. Any questions for Eric and Sam on any of these issues?
I have a question, maybe it's a question for Jason. So how's the attendance been down here this summer with the boating? I know Deer Creek has seen a lot more pressure, and I don't know if it's because of the media. I understand they're going to limit boating on Deer Creek,
really?
the number of boats. Anyway, is there a count as to how many boats go on the water, how many fishermen come through the park? You familiar with that?
Yeah, so last weekend, around 2 o'clock on Saturday, there were 12 boats on the water.
On Saturday.
That's a Saturday, yeah. So it's really killed the impact. We're getting about 30 calls every day asking about the algae. So people just don't want to come here. They're going to Deer Creek, Jordanelle, Rockport, all the closer lakes. By noon, those parks are all at capacity. They're turning boats away. And last year I was at Rockport, and when Utah Lake closed down, we saw a huge amount of boaters coming from Utah Lake up to those lakes.
Jason said earlier this week that it's lower than he recalls ever seen it
Yeah,
for this time of the year.
that's too bad.
It is, because boating is not shut down on Utah Lake. But effectively, that's what happens with,
Yeah, I mean, I understand the negativity of the algae bloom and stuff, but is there a way we can do more promotion for people that have had successful experiences in conjunction with the algae bloom on the lake, you know, boating experiences and stuff, get that out to social media so that people understand that, hey, the lake is still open and usable and
yeah.
So that's actually going to be part of the meeting I mentioned, where we're getting together with recreation business owners, somebody from the state park, all these different people, to discuss not only for this year but for next year, because I mean it's entirely possible that a mountain could happen again in the future. That our efforts would be focusing on that, those positive stories that have happened, the successes that still happened. For instance, Lyndon Marine, I know he is watching the reports, but he's constantly pushing his social media, trying to get people to still come down. But I agree that it has definitely been significantly impacted at all access points, especially the public marinas that were the most popular. So we are trying to formalize those efforts and highlight those stories.
Thanks.
Is there any update on the dredging plan? Is it still scheduled for this fall?
Here in the park,
Yeah.
something was, at our last meeting, Jason
The
said.
governing board meeting, Jason brought up that they might be pushing later for winter time. I can't remember all the reason behind it. It was in the governing board minutes. But
So this September, we're going to take out all the power pavilions, everything out of the A-Loop campground. And so, yeah, it'll be more towards fall, winter time.
As a location to put material.
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4, report on the Utah Lake Summit from Central Utah.
You want me to say something?
Yeah, that'd be great.
How many in here attended the Utah Lake Summit?
Fantastic.
So first of all, thank you for attending, and thank you for your support. And we feel like it was a really positive, good event. And when we were deciding to put that event on, we didn't know if 50 people would show up or hundreds of people, and so we found a spot that would hold 250 people, and that's we filled all those spots and actually had people that wanted to show up that we just didn't have room for. So we felt really good about that level of support and interest, and I think it was a really good positive discussion from different viewpoints on a lot of different issues on Utah Lake, and I haven't heard anything other than good positive feedback that people really enjoyed it, and it was very informative, and so appreciate all of your support from this group, including quite a few of the presenters that were from this group. So overall, I think it was really good. If there's any feedback, we'd be glad to hear it, and hopefully, I'm hopeful that we'll do it again next year.
I got a survey, an email survey on that.
There was a survey that went out, so that's
I think I filled mine.
that's the easiest way to give feedback.
Don't be afraid to send an email to Chris or Gene Shawcroft and say, we loved it, we would love to do it again. They're not sure whether or not it should be an annual thing or a biannual thing, but would like that feedback to know what the level of interest is at. They don't want to hold it too often that all of a sudden interest fades. So.
Do you have plans of posting those materials and presentations and
It's all on the district website. If you go to Central Utah's website, you can access all of the materials from that.
I looked a little while ago, I didn't see it. We're happy to post a link to that information on the Utah Lake project page too, if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I can
Maybe
send
on
it
the
to you.
commission site too.
Yeah,
We'll put a link to it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5. Over the past couple of years, we've been formulating a group to help guide water quality studies on Utah Lake. And we've got Scott here to give us an update on where we stand in that process.
Great, thanks. So last time we met, was it April 19th was the day? We had kind of our last round of minor edits from this group to go into the charter document that's going to guide the steering committee and science panel and the study process. So we incorporated those comments and along with some comments on the resolution that Eric prepared for the commission. And those, I believe, were sent to the commission and voted electronically and returned, I think, May 12th. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
And then from there, Eric and I worked through kind of a nomination process. So if you remember, the charter discussion was really setting up the positions or the stakeholder interests that would be included in the steering committee and the science panel and kind of the rules that would guide those committees. And then we worked into a nomination process to see who would fill those actual seats. And I think I only have about 20 copies here, and I was going to pull it up, but my connection's not great. So if you don't mind sharing these. There's a couple, if you look through the stakeholder interest, these are all the ones, the stakeholder interest and the affiliation. Those were the exact items from the table in the document. I pulled those in here, and then we worked through a nomination process to fill the seats for these. Kind of two different nomination processes. One where we had an agency that was represented, like DNR or Fish Wildlife Service. We just sent a letter to those agencies and asked for their recommendation on who to fill that position and the alternate position. And so they all returned those to us. The second mostly applies for like the recreational community, conservation and environmental community, agriculture, the POTWs, and the municipalities. For the ones that Eric and I kind of divided and conquered that effort, I took on agriculture, recreation, and conservation and environment, and we cast a broad net to folks that represent those communities and asked them to huddle themselves into a room and then send us their nomination to fill those positions. For the agricultural community, for example, the State Department of Agriculture and Food, the local Conservation Commission, and that's Zone 3 house right here in Provo, and the conservation districts, which kind of they're a locally elected body of officials that represent local ranchers and agricultural producers. And so they got back to us with a recommendation for their representative and alternatives. Same for the recreation community. We cast a net to a whole bunch of different recreational user groups. They didn't really get themselves into a room. We just got a bunch of individual recommendations, and then working with Eric, we kind of waded through those to kind of see which ones we thought would be able to broadly represent the recreational community as a whole, not one particular organization or another, like an angler versus a paddleboarder versus a water skier versus a sailor. So we were looking for someone with a diverse background that could do a good job representing the broader recreation community. And the conservation and environmental community, these folks, they actually did get themselves into a room, had a good debate, and sent us their recommendations. For the POTWs, I don't know, Eric, if you want to say a word about those, and the municipalities, but you guys working through the commission and your contacts with the POTWs just had them get together and send in their nominations. So I don't know if we need to go through the names here. Some of you folks are here today that are on the committee, but this is what we've come up with. We took this to the governing board. Was that June 22nd?
That sounds about right.
Sound about right? The governing board passed off on the idea of these representatives, and then now we've been working with each of these to make sure that they're 100% on board with the level of commitment, the time commitment, and what they're being asked to do to represent their individual constituents. Any questions on the committee?
So the governing board passed a resolution supporting the document that outlines how the study will be conducted, who will be involved.
Yeah.
And so now that that's done, it's time to get to work. Is that
Just get the word. Yep, that's what we're hoping.
So
And
the governing board saw these names and then.
they did.
Okay.
Yep, and I don't remember any recommendations or criticisms. I think everybody was pretty much on board with the committee that we've put together.
So can you email this list out to us?
Yes, I can. I'm about ready to make a web posting. I'll put it up on the web too this week. This has been somewhat made public, and we've had contact with each of these individuals. Some have been harder to track down than others, but I just wanted to make sure that they were on board before we put the list out far and
You were
wide.
nominated.
Yeah. Hey, guess what?
If these people continue to be difficult to get a hold of,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it in.
is there an easy way to get them replaced? It would be easy to do so for some of our government
Yeah.
organizations, but when it comes to recreation and conservation,
Yeah,
do you
we have a broader list of folks that were nominated, so I think that if we need to, we'll be able to substitute in. But I don't see a problem right now. So
And those that were specifically for recreation, we had them submit their letter of interest and kind of letter of commitment. And they were very committed to attending the meetings and participating. So I don't think that we'll have too big of a problem there, just because of their interest in.
I would recommend that if at the beginning they're not responding, that we replace them quickly
Yep.
to get somebody who will respond so that those interests are represented.
yeah, I agree.
Does the governing board have to approve a replacement, or how does a replacement?
Well, I think it would be beneficial to vet them to this group and the governing board. I don't know that there's a formal vote, but I think, we want to seek their approval or endorsement or
I'm
whatever.
just thinking of the POTW alternate.
Mhm.
I have a really good person for that now.
That one is actually, I don't think that we have been given a name for
Yes, we
that.
have.
Have we? Okay, I'm sorry that,
Have you submitted a name for that?
Yeah, Eric had called me over a month ago, and I got an email from Eric and Erica. That's not.
Just slur at the end and we'll
I
both
got
answer.
this email from, yeah, I can tell by the hair. And I gave, but at the time he gave me a choice, I think it was Juan and Dave Norman and those guys. David Norman is the backup for Mayor Wimmer, so I gave them David Barlow. Eric indicated she wanted to be somebody from TSSD, so this is Mr. Barlow, but I did give the name to Eric.
okay, sorry, must have,
So you
Break down a
want that
community.
to be, you submitted that as a nomination?
Yeah, and she called and asked if I would.
and that works for me as long as the rest of the POTW community is on board with it. I guess one clarification here, just a typo in this version, or not typo, but for the water quality stakeholder interest, I meant to have co-chair in there, because as in the charter document, we have the commission and water quality co-chairing the committee.
Brian's the co-chair.
Hey, Scott?
Yeah.
So this is the stakeholder representatives.
Mhm.
What about the scientist panel?
Yeah,
Have
so-
we chose that yet?
We haven't. So next steps, well, I'll just skip right ahead to that, but the steering committee, once they're up and rolling, one of the first tasks for that committee is to start talking about who they would like to have represent the scientific disciplines that are presented in the document, and if they need to be changed, make recommendations for it. So we have not started a process for assigning positions or representatives for the science panel.
That's a responsibility of the steering
That
committee,
is
right? So
right.
meeting one, that will be agenda item number 2 after welcome and introduction.
Yeah, or, I'm sure there'll be some
We'll
other things
discuss
going
that
on. But that leads me to next steps. So what I think this list is pretty much final. We're going to send out a formal welcome to the committee. Thank you for your interest. And then we're going to try to get on board as soon as possible with our first meeting. The process that we're working through now is that we want to have a professional facilitator on board before we host the first meeting. And the contractual arrangement that we're using to do that, we're just now working through the process. We have this master services agreement that we have been renewing the last couple years. And what this does, it pre-qualifies certain firms for certain types of work, like TMDL development or standards development, water quality analysis, and stakeholder facilitation is one of those. And we just barely renewed that, closed July 12th, last week. And what that'll do is it'll allow us to work pretty closely without having to go through our state finance folks directly with the contractors. So I'm about finished developing a scope of work for this facilitation effort, and then I'll be able to communicate that directly to individual contractors that are on that list, and then allow them to submit proposals, and then we'll work through kind of ranking those proposals with Eric, and then maybe one of the first orders of business will be to finalize that. So, so that process, I think it closed last week. I know they were meeting sometime this week to have discussions on it. But I think it's about 2 weeks until that list is finalized, and I'll have that work plan ready to go for when that list is finalized, and we'll communicate that. And so probably another week or two to work out the details of getting a contract. If you've all dealt with contracting and fiscal arrangements, they can take a little bit more time. So it's a little slower than you anticipate. It's a little bit slower than I had hoped. We were hoping that we could be meeting in July, but we're going to be probably well into August, if not a touch later.
Any questions from the committee or other interested parties about this issue?
So the science panel won't be picked until the fall?
I'm guessing the fall. Yeah. Once the steering committee gets on board, maybe I'll touch a little bit more on the facilitation. We've had a couple of discussions with the University of Utah's Environmental Disputes Resolution Program. There are folks that do professional facilitation for certain environmental and civic and municipal projects throughout the state. Currently working with Springdale and down by Zion to kind of do a communication outreach and figure out how they can manage some of the pressures they have with increased visitation at the park and those kinds of issues. And they've given us some guidance on things that we might want to consider in a facilitated effort. One of those is a situational assessment where the facilitator would meet with each of the committee members and all the stakeholders to make sure, to see where everybody's starting points are, where are the roadblocks, what do they need to have to kind of get them to a collaborative solution. And then that, I think, allows the facilitator to be able to manage the group in a way and negotiate and direct the group to a common solution. So that would be, while the committee is working through some of these first things, I think that'll be something that the facilitator will do. And of course, the facilitator will be doing the meeting facilitation, working with, we envision potentially bringing on a contract manager to help digest the scientific information into technical reports. So working with the science panel and the contractors that are on the ground, and then help bring that information to the science panel and then into a report format for the steering committee's consideration. So the facilitator will kind of help juggle those efforts and make it a little less my responsibility than and a little bit more of theirs.
I like that.
Scott, so the other stakeholders that aren't necessarily on steering or science, will they be invited to those meetings, and is it an open meeting, and will they be held here?
They are open meetings. The charter says that we're going to meet here, but we're actually working with, I think Central Utah has offered up their facility up in Orem to, they have a little bit better conferencing room with Wi-Fi connection and things that we can actually do teleconference and things. It's a little more difficult here. We learned in our stakeholder meeting back in March that it's not as easy to do in a room that's not quite set up like one of theirs would be. So I think we're going to move it up there as long as everybody's okay with it. And then, sorry, what was the second part?
Just the emails will be sent out for invitation?
Yeah, so it is an open meeting. It's not exclusive to these folks. We want the broader stakeholder community to be involved. When I think we're going to allow the facilitator to figure out how to handle that process, whether it's the audience can have a card or some kind of comment card or a direct connection to their stakeholder affiliate, so that there is a direct avenue where they can participate and share ideas with the larger group. Let them figure it out, and one of the concerns is if it's kind of an open forum, then the meeting might get a little bit diverted, but that's something I think for the facilitator to figure out. But yes.
But certainly for attendance.
For attendance, it's an open meeting, and I would like it so that every stakeholder and anyone from the public has some kind of direct communication with the steering committee.
So will we get an invite to, or at least a showing that this is the date of the meeting?
Yeah.
in case we're interested in meeting.
And
the
that
audience
is, that's how I would like to do it.
Will we do the broader stakeholder group email list? Is that the
I
idea?
think just as an update, it would be, the steering committee meeting is going to be held here. This is the agenda. If you would like to attend, please do so. How big is your room?
It's
Easy
pretty,
to say.
it's
Okay.
our conference room, so our boardroom.
And I think the same is going to be true of the science panel meetings, although I assume that fewer people would be interested in attending the science meetings than they would the stakeholder type meeting.
It sounds like it'll be a general format what we have here. We welcome all to come. It might necessarily have to have a stricter structure where committee members are sitting together and the general public is observing and raises, you may have a more formal way for them to interact, but it's important that those meetings are open so that everyone has an opportunity to see what direction they're headed.
Having a facilitator will keep that on track.
Yep.
I hope so.
And it would be good, the sooner, the quickest, the earliest you can get those notifications out, the better too.
Yeah.
Planning, calendar, so.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Calendars are like.
Will these be monthly meetings, quarterly meetings?
I don't know that we've said monthly or quarterly. I think in the charter we said about 6 meetings a year. But I think where we're getting going, we might need to meet a little bit more often than that so that we can get set up and move quickly into the science panel so that ideally any research that comes out of, we can start field work next spring and have research contracts hit the ground, for the field season next year. So I'd probably monthly at the beginning, but about 6 a year, hopefully. Want to get the work done, but not consume everybody's time. Because I think that, there'll probably be 3 or 4 hour meetings, I would guess.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody from the municipality side from Orem. I think they will be a key, being a bigger treatment plant.
On the stakeholder
Right.
list here.
Was there anybody contacted from Orem, or I think
I'll let Eric.
Simply that we didn't get nominations from.
Can we nominate him? Yes, or will?
That's called
Or-
the draft.
Or
Again-
have somebody from Orem?
Again, they will be invited to each of these meetings, and so whether they decide to speak with Gary or Brad or Mayor
Neil, did
Wimmer,
we
they will
miss
have
any
a
nomination? for
direct
Orem?
ability to
Or-
communicate with.
No, we were not ready to nominate someone yet, but we are now.
Okay.
So if there's a vacancy, we'll gladly fill it when it comes available. We'll be involved.
Because we have 2 representatives from Springville, so we'll be willing to give one of those up.
You're willing
No,
to.
I mean, I'll attend the meeting, but I think somebody from Orem ought to be a voting member.
Yeah, and if, I don't know if, the POTW interest where Temp is the representative, maybe Orem could be the alternate there if that was something that you all would be. But that's all up to your community and, make the recommendation. We're happy to take it. So.
We'll talk amongst ourselves and see what we can come up with maybe.
And again, this will probably be up to the facilitator, but one of the things I kind of envision for this is, there's opportunity here for working groups on the side for each one of these stakeholder interests. For this case, exactly, right? I mean, you have, John will do a great job representing the POTWs, but, it might be beneficial to meet regularly or something to have a side working group to be able to effectively communicate your issues to the steering committee. Same goes for the recreation or the conservation environment. So that's something that I was going to pitch to the facilitator to see if they thought it would be worthwhile. My goal with this is really, this is one person at the table. We have 16 people representing more than 100 folks that I have on a current mailing list right now. So my goal is to really make sure that we're capturing that broader stakeholder idea and interest, so that everybody is included in the process.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Let's move on to the next agenda item where we get to listen to you some more with an update on the
Actually,
algae.
lucky for you, I invited Ben Holcomb down today. He's our harmful algal bloom coordinator, and he knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. So
maybe unlucky for us.
Maybe.
So, unless you have a projector or not.
Yes, we do.
Because I brought some slides if you guys want to see some visuals.
Yeah.
So you can start there.
Oh, did you?
While we're getting this ready, if you need a donut or a drink, they're over in the corner.
Oh.
Were you on the Doug Wright show a little bit ago?
I think, yeah, a couple of times I've been on the show.
I thought they said Ben Holden.
Lucky you.
Sam.
Well, he's like, he mentioned something like, we haven't talked about this as a prequel to the show. And then I was like, I swear I was on here like 2 weeks ago.
Where would I find it?
Do you want me to set it right back up here again? Or?
Oh, right there.
It's
Especially powered on again? I think that should be it.
It should be Dave.
yeah, it should be the plug-in.
Was it already in position and everything, right?
Click on D. There you go. And Utah Lake Commission.
Just, slide the chair.
Well,
Actually,
I didn't get in this position. I got
Warming up.
And you mind share? I'll relocate.
Oh, I can move
So
too.
So how come?
I'll relocate so you can be closer.
Is it on? Yep.
Here, let me move over. Wherever you guys like me to stand.
Can you make it, raise it up anymore?
There is a lot of.
Maybe a little bit smaller, do you want me to? Or?
Here, sit it on this.
I think that looks okay.
Is that going to make it?
It'll just make it more stable. It tends to slide on that chair. Put it
My
forward.
concern is it's going to. That just made it bigger.
Okay.
I tried to explain that to people.
Yeah, I think how you had it before. I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Something, somehow that fixed it.
Awesome.
All right, Ben,
I was actually.
Okay.
let us know what we're facing.
All right. So.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so as you know, we don't have direct funding to conduct what we'd ideally like to do a good assessment on all our water bodies in terms of whether they're experiencing a cyanobacteria bloom or not. So we've gone through a process to prioritize them. We've developed SOPs. We've got lots of partners. That's the only way we're able to accomplish most of what we do. And then this year we had an update to our HAB guidance. And when I say we and us, I don't mean DWQ, I mean all the partners that help us advise the public by collecting data, by providing their expertise, by communicating. And so this particular guidance is specific for the recreational aspect of our waters. And this one was jointly developed between our Department of Health and us. And this one was updated this year, essentially just removed the caution advisory, and the warning advisory kind of encompassed that. Last year we had a caution advisory at 20,000 cells per mil of cyanobacteria or 4 micrograms per liter of microcystin. And then we also included cylindrospermopsin because that was that's new information that EPA provided. And then also anatoxin. These were all kind of updates to literature review that EPA had done. They still have a draft of a recreational guidance for harmful algal blooms, and we incorporated those new information, new data into this guidance. Our decision-making algorithm is essentially the same, although the numbers are reflective of that earlier slide. So essentially, once any of those tiers once any of those indicators within tier 1 are hit, then that goes into a warning. And then we try to be as specific as possible. So for example, this year it started out in Provo Bay. So the warning was limited to Provo Bay. And then as the bloom developed and as our data came forth, that moved forward with a lake-wide, as you know. So here's just kind of a visual of some of the cell counts we've seen up through last week. Majority of the sites are over that 20,000. Well, all of the sites that we've collected thus far up through this point have been over the 20,000 cells per mil, and we still have some of those hot spots in Provo Bay. Yeah.
You're specifically targeting areas that satellite imagery and so forth are indicating likely have bloom, right? So these are not standardized data collection points, but rather targeted data collection points, right?
It's a mix. So when we first collected data, and it's also in conjunction with our Utah Lake study. So we wouldn't have probably this amount of data if we didn't have partners like BYU or University of Utah, or even our own staff that already have dedicated plans to go out and collect data. And so we do have, all of these sites are reflective of where those locations are. So some of those are, well actually I think all of them except for maybe 2 are established sites.
Okay.
So they all have a storette, they all have a history of being sampled, and so we can go back and kind of see how things have changed at that particular site through this year, for example.
I have a question too. So
Yeah.
it seemed to me last year, we took the samples, they had to be sent to Florida or somewhere, and then it took quite a while to get back. Is that still the same process this year, or are we getting information sooner?
Yeah, we're getting information a lot quicker. Last year, that was kind of an early problem because we were really caught unexpected with a bloom beginning in July. This year, we were more prepared, but still yet weren't expecting a bloom starting in June. So we did have the pieces in place. The Utah Public Health Lab has the capacity to run some toxins, and the Department of Ag and Food has a lab. They're just getting up to speed. They've been kind of doing some beta testing on their work. But for example, if we haven't seen any toxins that have gone beyond 4, which is that threshold. I mean, we're having detections, and so if we are getting positive detections, we are sending them to an external lab that's fully certified, so we can hit those marks. And so we don't necessarily need those data immediately, those conformational data, because we have other indicators that can help us protect the public in the interim. So.
Good question, Ben.
Yeah.
Really good question. So what's the actual method of collecting the sample? Are they surface samples, or integrated samples, or?
So with this bloom, there hasn't been much of a surface scum associated with it. So all of these have been integrated samples, like an elbow depth integrated sample. And that's, so yeah, we haven't seen, I was thinking we might be developing that point because from just on the satellite imagery and the reports from people out there, they're like, it's getting really thick. So, and then also as the bloom tends to mature, it floats up and starts to die and senesce, and that's typically where you get your nastiest toxins is as it's dying. But we're not seeing that, so it could still be actively blooming in many places.
And you have species of what these are so far?
Yeah, so this started off with in Provo Bay. Primarily, it was about mid-June is when it started popping up, and it was primarily, it was nearly 100% Dolichospermum crassum. which was one of the dominant taxa in Schofield last year. So it has a high potential to be really problematic in terms of toxin production. And so you could see it migrating out of Provo Bay and moving up north towards the state park here. And I think simultaneously, or pretty soon thereafter, in the northern part, I don't know if my cursor's not going to show up, but in the northern part up near Linden, those samples appear to be dominated by Aphanizomenon. And so we got this bloom starting in the north, the one at Provo Bay, and then also down in Goshen, the southern part, and that's primarily Aphanizomenon, but it has a pretty strong signal of Dolichospermum in it. And so I'll move through a couple slides here, and then we can kind of see. This kind of just talks about some of the testing that we do. So we're doing that cyanobacteria cell count and identification. And then we also have these test strips that give us a rapid within the day of testing screens, so that we're not just sending samples off to a lab if we don't know really what's coming. And then also, like I mentioned, that we have a bit more capacity here in state. So here's what we're seeing from satellite imagery. This was on June 29th. As I mentioned, you can see like it's really concentrated in that Provo Bay area. And so the image on the right is an interpretation or a kind of a translation of what we're seeing, what we can see. But so this image on the left was taken by a Sentinel satellite from European Space Agency. And then there's this project that NASA and NOAA, USGS and EPA are working on collectively to translate these images into cyanobacteria cell counts. So just to give you a broad idea, that pink coloration is their max on their scale, and that's approximately 3 million cells per mil, and the red is about 1 million, and the outer edge where we're seeing like the teal color is about 100,000. And the background, the black, is 10,000 cells per mil. So there's still some work to be done. And we're not looking at it, and this is still in a beta testing phase, so I wouldn't look at it so much as like the precision of the numbers, but more like where is the bloom concentrated and how's it moving and where are people most at risk. So this is what we were seeing on June 29th.
Did your field samples somewhat reflect this?
Yeah, so in that Provo Bay, for example, on this date, we got 2.8 million cells per mil. So their unit is essentially like microcystis cells per mil, and since we're seeing a lot of Dolichospermum, there's going to be a little bit of difference in terms of that quantity of what is being reflected back into space. And so just over a week later, the lake really just popped. And so if you were to look at the image on the left, it doesn't look entirely too much different than what we were seeing the week before, but our eyes can't see that level of detail. And so this was shortly after this is when the lake was put under a warning where we were confirming all those sites that I had on the third slide where we were getting cell counts basically above 100,000 lake-wide. And then I forget if it was, I guess it was last week, we were getting toxin hits everywhere. So we had antitoxin hits lake-wide, and although low, but we are getting detections up to 1.
So Provo Bay is decreasing on that one?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one to me. So what this is showing is that it's dominated by a green algae, and I haven't got into the details yet of.
Didn't Provo Bay start with a green bloom
earlier?
Yeah,
it did. It started actually when it first started. It was like half of Provo Bay was that black, and then the other half was a cyanobacteria signal. But so our recent sample on this date, we had about 250,000 cells per mil of Dolichospermum still in Provo Bay area. But it could still, like I mentioned, I didn't look into the data to see, like, well, there could be millions of green algae that are somehow obscuring this. So we'll work that out. The USGS is going to do the in situ validation of their model on Utah Lake. And so, at the end of this year, we'll have probably a much improved system. But I think it's been really helpful for us to just kind of...
Typo on the year?
Yeah, totally. At least I got the first. I just made these this morning quickly. So
on the 15th was a green algae bloom there then?
In Provo Bay.
Well, that's what it's predicting, is that it's a non-cyanobacteria in Provo Bay. But our samples that week, we had high Dolichospermum counts.
What about the rest of the lake?
The rest of the lake, we had over, like the northern part up where it's pink, we were getting 600,000 or so around the Linden.
3 million when it's that color. So is that? I mean, is this over counting or?
Yeah, I think it's an overestimate in general. But again, I wouldn't get caught up too much in the precision of the numbers. I mean, we're not making decisions based on this modeling effort. It's more on where's the bloom going, where is it more likely to be concentrated, and it's more of that
Well, my
along those
concern is
lines.
just when you look at that and you see it's it's all red. I mean, that looks pretty scary. But if the numbers aren't coming back, that the magenta is actually 3 million and the other is actually like 1 million, it definitely is something that we'll want to not be publishing like that.
Yeah, we haven't pushed these images out.
I actually tried to beg him for them, and he said, "You probably don't want to.
You don't want to see
publish
that."
these, so
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to publish them. I mean, it would be good for us to be able to have access to them somehow, but to get them out to the general public, that right there is alarming and doesn't help with the publicity of the lake. The concern, and Eric kind of brought this up the other day, is that you're trying to protect as DWQ the beneficial use of the lake of recreation, but you're killing it with these algal blooms and the way that they're being managed and reported, and it's it's good to keep people safe, but somehow there needs to be this balance of finding out how to not freak people out over something that's really not to that point where it really should, but helping them to understand. And I don't know how you educate people to where it's like, by the way, there's toxins in everything. So the fact that there's a detectable amount of toxins in the lake doesn't mean that you can't go do stuff at the lake. So that's my concern, and I just don't know how you package that PR wise and everything, and like I said, balance the keeping safe with making sure that you don't actually destroy the beneficial use of recreation on the lake by making everybody so scared of Utah Lake that they won't go here, which sounds like what's happening.
This image says Utah Lake is now full of lava.
Yeah, you will die
it's
if
on
you
fire.
go to the lake.
But just bear in mind, I agree, like, there's problems with the numbers, but bear in mind, like, our threshold is 20,000, and so that's, no matter where you look throughout the lake, that number's blown out. So I think...
except for Provo Bay, right?
Except for Provo Bay, but we're not using these as management decisions. So,
Was this the same species again, was Dolichospermum again?
Yeah. I think, in regards to the communication, I think it's still sensationalized. I agree with you there.
It gets to the papers,
But
and it's like,
I think
it's
this year
dangerous.
is
Run away.
I think it's a lot less sensationalized this year than it was last year. We've worked hard to try to message as good as we can, and once the media takes hold of whatever they're going to do with it, that's out of our hands. It's kind of their business side of it, and that's how they're going to handle it.
Understandable, but still making sure that the message from DWQ is not being packaged in such a way that it's, that it's adding fuel to the fire. Or
I think
the lava, as
Eric
the
can
case may be.
testify. We've worked pretty hard on trying to improve all of those things. And so we're also getting some poison control reports, dramatically less than we received last year. This is through the Utah Poison Control Center. Substantially less, but still there's nearly a quarter, 24% are symptomatic when they do call in. They're not just. I think this may play in part because we were a little earlier in warning things, and but there's still cases where people are experiencing these symptoms out there.
So I have a real issue with that. So that still is so ambiguous as far as, near the lake, or exposed to, regulated in or exposed to lake water. What does that mean?
Well, we're
on the beach. I mean, that should, the Utah Poison Control should really be more accurate on how that exposure.
Yeah, we have this year we made a real effort to try to get like precise coordinates of where people were recreating, and that's still, I haven't seen the results. I mean, this is just broadly, this is what we're seeing or being reported. I don't know if that statement is accurate, that recreated in or exposed to Utah lake water, but this year we've done a much better job of having precise locations of where people actually are.
And what are they doing?
Yeah, and what they're doing, yep. We have a whole series of questions this year.
Last year we went out, as you know, all the time, and I didn't see 600 people in the water all summer long, total.
Mm-hmm.
You had 600 people that were symptomatic last year, and I'm going,
Well, this was before it was closed. Was when we were, after it was closed. Of course, there were no people out there, but
No. I'm talking about before too.
no.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Oh, yeah.
where those. I mean, there's people out there. It's a big water body.
That's part of the thing that gets out in the public is that when you do this stuff, and everyone, people are actually really sick of this. Well, there's 1,000 allergens out there that will do that.
That's always a work in progress, but these are common procedures for the poison control to collect these data, and so they send these reports to us specific for this bloom. Jeff?
Is this what feeds your human illness center?
No, it doesn't. This is just anecdotal stuff, more or less. Yeah.
Question. Has there been any coordination or work with the medical field about this reporting and stuff? Anybody that's been in the water industry, there's always, you get comments or calls from the public, hey, my baby's sick, or I've got diarrhea, the doctor said it's coming from the water. When in fact, the week before they were up in the UNS camping or something like that. Has there been any contact with the medical field to kind of educate them and try to get more information as to specifics of what their habits were before this exposure and stuff like that,
Yeah, I think poison control is located there at the University Hospital, and so they work with. I don't know exactly what their program involves with their outreach, but I know that's been identified. Just meet more with like practitioners.
Well, I get some of those symptoms just watching the news.
Yeah.
Is that local or national?
Both. They asked them if they were hydrated.
Depends.
68 people.
I don't know the precise questions.
Yeah, or they got dehydrated, or they got,
Some sunshine.
or they were out too long, or
I
they
think
were.
poison control recognizes all this, right? That's one of the tough things with epidemiological studies is being able to link the causation. So they are right now trying to develop methods to be able to make a better linkage so that it is reflective of what's actually happening on the lake. Because they certainly know that people are getting sick, or you go to a certain restaurant where you're just not feeling well, and they're trying to do a better job of making that link. And now here they're just providing us the information of what they've seen, and their call volumes do change based on the conditions in the lake. Some of it's response to the news. The first call we had were actually the day before we actually had sample results back. So we did have some calls from folks recreated in Provo Bay. Some of those were informational calls, and I think one of those was a symptomatic call. So,
Yeah,
but still, they could be
Right.
just someone
There's
getting
no doubt
sick,
that
and they're
there's-
just trying to work through being able to make a better link and
Yeah.
see if there's something really there.
Yeah, there's no doubt, like, there's a rationale for all of these. Like, many of them may not be related, but it's hard to dismiss every one of those cases. So, it's an FYI. As you know, or may not know, we do have 3 buoys out here that we're using to also simultaneously track things. For me, it's still a beta testing phase because they are just, last year we had them out for just a few months. And so we're not at a phase yet to use them as predictive or as specific thresholds, but we are able to see certain detections of phycocyanin, for example. We also have one in Deer Creek Reservoir and in Schofield.
Who maintains those and calibrates them?
We do.
Just talk to your contract with
I don't, do you know where that ended up, Scott? I don't know if they had the capability. We were going to work with iUtah to do this, and then actually I still have it up there as a bullet, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're still hoping to get to that point. But from the field side, we do that. We are certainly working with them on the data management side of it, but we haven't yet transitioned for them to handle the calibration and the field aspect.
Last August, when we deployed the buoys with the buoy Utah Lake, we did develop an MOA with BYU to do the calibration and data management, quality control kind of stuff, correct for drift and make sure the sensors are reading accurately. I think what we've learned is that it's easier for us to do it while we're out there. And this year, we're adjusting that MOA to be more reflective of our monitoring effort. So where we're collecting information for chlorophyll and blue-green algae specifically, we need to field verify the readings for the sondes. So we partnered with BYU under that agreement for this year as part of their regular weekly monitoring run to collect chlorophyll and phytoplankton that we can then use in a data analysis this winter to kind of field verify and develop a relationship between what the sonde is reading and what we're actually seeing in the field.
Yeah, so if you go to that website, the waterqualitydatalive.com, that actually has all 5 of our buoys systems on there.
Hey Ben, when you click on a parameter and it gives you 7 days of data, and then
Yeah.
is there a way to get data further back?
Yeah.
Bigger time range.
Yeah. Not for the public yet, but for us, I mean, we can log in and pull all that data. If you have a specific data set you're interested in, just let us know. And but right now, all of it's raw. We haven't cleaned anything. It'd just be as is.
And I guess as we move forward through the study and through different things, it would be good to be able to look at, as some of these algal blooms, leading up to going through, coming, to the end of and so forth, and just seeing what these, are showing and how they're, how reflective they are and different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly we're using these 3 primary locations right now to kind of monitor the status of the bloom, and so we're going to have, as you may know, we're going to need 2 consecutive weeks of low counts or low toxins to remove the warning. So we're using those 3 sites as kind of a sentinel site for the condition of the lake. Here's an example of the readout. If you click on a site and a parameter, like a 7-day readout. And then in addition to what we're doing with water quality and the Department of Health with recreation, the Division of Drinking Water has their response plan where they're working with their drinking water facility to ensure that they're prepared if such an event were to occur. For example, Schofield had a major problem last year, and the drinking water facility there at Price was prepared because they have experienced blooms in general, and so they were prepared for that. And then likewise, Department of Ag and Food, as I mentioned, they've got capacity now to run their toxins. They've got their own response plan developed, and so we share data with them and vice versa, and so we know where one another's collecting samples and what the results are. And then finally, our communication, most of it goes through our website, habs.utah.gov. There's some further information at Department of Health, and that's all I've got.
Has there ever been a green algae related fatality, human fatality in the U.S. that we know of?
I don't think any for recreation. There's been some through like dialysis. There may have been some through drinking water facilities, but none in the U.S. that I know of. I know there's been some serious cases in Brazil, but as far as recreation, none have been like. That's definitely a cyanotoxin death.
There was a local report yesterday that said one of our folks said can be fatal, and I thought, shouldn't we at least have a fatality in the whole U.S. before we mention such a thing?
Yeah, I agree. But it's media sensationalizing things.
Well, but this is a direct quote from one of our own.
Oh.
Maybe at the county level. So.
Yeah, well, I would step up to that. I had a long discussion about that. That term was never used. That would have been in the Tribune.
The Herald, and I know the Herald is really good at misquotes.
But all the news that was. Our health officer was very angry about that. So he called.
Okay.
That was never used within.
That's great.
It's like it's possible to kill dogs, but not really.
Okay, and I've worked with those reporters before and seen some amazing things that I didn't know I had said as well. So understandable.
Yeah, I don't even read them because it would. Yeah, I'll let other people tell me what bad things I
Do we have
said.
any other questions for Ben? Okay.
Good job.
Thank you, Ben, for the update. Sure. Habs.utah.gov seems to be the go-to place for the most current information.
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
Not the media.
The next agenda item is just general comments from the public and from committee members. Just go around the room, and if you have anything to say, just raise your hand. Moving around. Go back.
Just wanted to bring up, Provo met with Utah Lake and Department of this fishing game, right? What was the other state group?
Division of Water Quality.
Well, DWQ, and then there was also
Renewable energy.
No. Anyway, we met with a few groups. It was either Fish and Game or Wildlife or somebody with the state.
Oh, Division of Wildlife. Sorry.
Thank you, Division of Wildlife. And we talked about the possibility of doing some wetland diking on the west side of the highway east of Provo Bay, and for wildlife and hunting purposes and so forth, but also for water quality. And so we've been having some of those discussions, and DWQ was involved in that, and I think there's a lot of interest there on what can be done and some different possibilities for using a more sustainable approach rather than necessarily worrying about end-of-pipe issues, looking at something that's more sustainable and more natural, and that actually serves several other purposes as opposed to just dumping chemicals in to get rid of phosphorus. So anyway, we're starting those meetings and we're working through that, and just wanted to let the larger group know that that's happening.
Good. Anything around here?
Got a comment?
A few things.
Yeah. So some of the research I'm doing, maybe some of you have heard of it. We're looking at nutrients through the atmosphere, call it atmospheric deposition, and how much that contributes to the nutrient budget on Utah Lake. It's never been measured before. And so just some preliminary data that we've been collecting for a few months now that has been significant. There's quite a bit of phosphorus and nitrogen that's being, nitrogen and phosphorus load through the atmosphere, through rainwater and dust. So that's kind of an update there.
Yeah, you know, added on to that, so we're continuing our tributary loading data. We go to every place that's flowing every month. We're also continuing our ecological, our water quality / phytoplankton / zooplankton and benthic work. And a couple things that we're still, well, you know, we did the one with the mining capacity of the sediments with Matt Randall last year, so the next phase of that is to do actual reflux, what's the potential. I know Goel, Greenwich, Goel, and University of Utah have done some of that, but we're gonna try to expand that as well to look at. We're gonna what are the realistic numbers that come out of the sediments, what comes out of the atmosphere, what comes in our tributaries, you know, from both point and non-point sources. And then finally, we've got an exciting thing that we just are getting ready to launch out with the paleo study. And this is to look at, you know, trying to refine, you know, there's already been a couple of attempts at doing that, you know, trying to time, you know, the concurrence of different diatom communities or whatever. So they're pretty ambiguous. We're trying to refine that with some work, with some additional dating techniques and so forth. So, yeah, the idea being is, you know, what's happened before settlement, what happened before 1975 when the Clean Water Act actually, you know, came into a legal requirement. And so, you know, we're trying to address these questions as far as, you know, what's the potential, what was it like, you know, pre and post, and also relative to 1975, so that we have some idea of where we are today compared to what's in the past. So these will take another year or so to get these finished, but we're certainly active in doing these kinds of things with both loading and with the potential responses.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
One comment too. When I pass this around, if funding permits, you notice this is kind of green color. So these are zooplankton that are actually eating out the cyanobacteria out there. So if funding continues, we're going to look at the DNA of these individual zooplankton to see what phytoplankton is actually, what species of phytoplankton they're eating in relative proportion to what's out there. So hopefully we'll be able to do that this summer.
Okay. Anything else? Back row. John, you always have something to say.
Well.
Not today.
He's speechless.
Okay, back here. Great. With that, reminder that the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 16th. Eric will keep us updated if we